Hello, everybody. Let's talk about the lawbringer rework here for a minute. I know it's a big thing going around right now, and I want to give my opinion as well as an LB main. I kind of have to, but I want to bring this up because it's not entirely bad. I think there is a lot of possibility with this, just like with a lot of the things they do. UB put something out, and it will probably not listen to us too much, and this will probably end up getting released basically as is, as we've seen with the Jormungandr rework. But let's talk about some stuff that can change about the LB rework, and stuff that should stay. Let's start off with the basic stuff he got. He got a triple light chain, which I guess I could see why the new interns who were put on this project would think it was a good idea. So for those of you who don't know, the Ubisoft devs for Honor actually got a whole new host of interns who basically made a lot of this LB design or LB rework. So yeah, that's why it's like this, and it's kind of going against most of the rework code that they kind of have. But let's talk about the thing. We have a triple chain light, of course, and I do understand why the interns thought this was a good idea, because of course we have Nabushi, who has got a triple chain light. Raiders got a triple chain light. You got Conquer and Aramusha have infinite lights. So they would think that light options would be very good, and I do believe that the light options are good. However, I don't think he particularly needs a triple light chain. Two lights, I think, would be the maximum for me. Just enough for an opener, or maybe if I were to hit him with the heavy on an opener, I can do two chain lights. Uh, I don't know about how I feel about the same side lights, especially considering the animation on the double top light, if you do the first two lights. And I think those finishing light animations are very, very bad and kind of unthought out. And so since we're talking about bad animations, let's go straight out of this into two of the worst animation changes in this entire rework. Let's talk about the Impale. The Impale into Wall Splat is now a second heavy in the chain instead of being a starter heavy, which is perfectly fine. I do like that change. It is very, very good. It gives him a little more damage output, and it allows him to get straight into his unblockable heavy off of Wall Splat and the Punish, so it's very, very good. However, the animation is very bad. It drops down as if he'd thrown the top heavy from the start after he lands a wall splat from Impale, which makes no sense. It really doesn't look good, and it makes no sense. Just make him do the top heavy twirl or whatever twirl he does for the heavy. There's no need to have him need to do that finishing recovery animation off the first chain, because it ruins like his punish ability. It makes him slower, I guess. It makes the attack slower. Instead of what right now where he wall splats and basically recovers, I don't know, I think it's 150 milliseconds faster and then can throw that top heavy. Now it looks a little janky and he's a little slower, and if he wall splats in a 4v4, you're more vulnerable. Of course, he has that hyper armor to counteract that vulnerability, but if someone just bashes, well, that hyper armor doesn't mean anything. Next, we'll talk about that chain shove. Oh my god, I don't know who thought about that animation, but they need to get fired. That animation is the worst animation I've seen in For Honor history, and we're talking about comparison with like Kyoshin and his entire thing about spinning a sword. You have a fucking cane sword, for fuck's sake, use Iaido, don't just spin the sword. But that shove, I understand they wanted a different animation for the shove because it's faintable, but it looks so retarded. It ruins the flow of LB. He looks so unclean. He looks like a 5-year-old trying to slap fight a fucking dog. It looks so bad. Give it back the standard shove animation, but make it slower and make him able to feint it. It would look clean. It would look nice. It would look good, and it would work overall with him better. Then from there, let's go on to, he now has a light tap. The little light boop he does on the finisher heavy is now off of any heavy on any side, and it counts as the second attack in his chain. I think this is a glorious change. This is something I've wanted with LB for a long time. I think that it's something he should have honestly probably had during his first rework. Just that little extra damage output and the ability to get it the unblockable mix-up it just means a lot. It gives him a lot of versatility. It gives him a lot of power. It doesn't make him overpowered in any sense, but it does make him more viable in both 1v1 and gank situations. And in this situation where you can do the guard break, heavy, and then the stun light, having a double light chain where he then can do another light after that is very good. Then let's talk about the fact that he can infinite chain off of it is very good, except it's only accessible off the top heavy unblockable, which I'm very happy with. If it were accessible off of all sides, I think it would be, I would lean a little towards the it shouldn't be there kind of thing. But since it's only on the top heavy, it's perfectly fine. The top heavy's slow. If you hit it and you do the stunning tap, it kind of makes sense that you can chain off of it because they didn't parry it or they dodged too early. So it's a punish of its own, basically, for someone not paying attention. Then we have the chain off zone. I think every character in the game should be able to chain off their zone attack. It just makes sense. And I think almost all of the roster can chain off their zone attack now. I'd have to think about that, and I think the only ones I can think of off the top of my head who can't chain off of it are Tiandi, and Kensei, I guess, but his kind of counts as 3 hits, so I guess multiple hit zones don't really chain, with the exception of, like, Berserker, who can chain off of it. So yeah, I think everybody should be able to chain off zone. It's just it adds a lot of versatility and a good mix-up option, and of course it does mean option select is more like common, but with how slow his zone animation is already, I don't think it makes a big difference that he does that. Then we'll go on to him having hyper armor. I think the hyper armor is a good thing. I think he should have always had hyper armor. Maybe not on shove like he always did, but he should have had some sort of hyper armor. In my opinion, I always thought it should have been on the finisher unblockable heavies, because it would have just made the most sense. He goes up for unblockable heavy, the person dodges on red, thinking he's going to do the third light, and now he punishes their dodge attack with the unblockable heavy with hyper armor. I always thought that made sense, and of course you can still feint it, so it's just an extra viable tool for him to counter spam of any type. It always made sense to me. And I think one thing I would like him to have that he doesn't have right now is the ability to chain his long arm. So if he were to throw a heavy, instead of doing shove, he could do long arm to catch people who were to, like, early dodge that shove. And of course he could feint it, but I would lose that feint ability for the ability to do a long arm mid-chain instead. I don't care if I can feint that shove. I want to be able to do long arm, because long arm punishes someone who early dodges the shove and gives you a free heavy. It's just, it makes sense. It's a free punish. They get their stamina back, so it's not a big deal about stamina. And you get a free heavy for them early dodging your shove. And of course, maybe if you got hyper armor to counteract dodge attacks, but I think that would be a little busted if you got hyper armor off of it, so I think that shouldn't be there. And of course, making it punishable via dodge attack would make sense with the long arm during chain. Then I think the last few things I want to talk about are the fact that his max punishes have changed. So off of a light parry, he can now do the top heavy unblockable like he always does and gets that stunning light, and he can now do a mix-up chain where he can go straight back into another unblockable heavy and basically do a different mix-up. So now it's not exactly a max punish change for the light parry, but I do believe it is a very good mix-up opportunity, and I don't see anybody capitalizing on it, but I don't think anybody has quite realized you can do that yet. I noticed it right away because I parried a top light from a lawbringer, punished him, and then the stun light, and then the unblockable heavy, and I was like, oh, I could do that. That's a very good mix-up opportunity. And then you have the there was, what was it? Oh, the max punish for out of stamina throw. I haven't tested this, and I'm going to test this after this and to put it up here at the end. I do believe you now can do top heavy on, because you always get the top heavy on throw out of stamina. I think you can do top heavy, stunning light, finisher, unblockable heavy, stun light now. Like I said, I have to fact check this before I 100% know. I'll probably either put it at the end of the video, like me showing it off, if it is possible, or I'll probably just put text on screen saying, yes, it is possible. If this is in fact possible, that is brilliant mix-up opportunity, and it brings him a whole bunch of damage, which he did lose a fair amount of damage in trade for this rework. So overall, I think the rework is good. okayly balanced. His hyper armor could be tuned down a little bit. His chain light should be slowed down. He should only have 2 chain lights. His animation for shove needs to get dropped. His chain shove just needs to get removed and returned to what it was. It's just terrible. And yeah, I do like a lot of the lawbringer changes, and it's very good. He now is more viable. He was already so a lot of people say he was probably about mid B tier, high B tier. To me, he was always a mid A tier to low S tier. No, maybe this is because I've played so much LB and I know and I've fought so many different types of players and I've experienced so many different types of playstyles, so I kind of got a handle on what people will do with LB. And I've specifically fought and trained against a lot of LB's counters, like Berserker. Like what you're seeing on screen, like I've fought a lot of Berserkers, and I've trained against the Berserker a whole lot, and I've got those parries down, and so because of that, I feel like he's a higher tier than he probably actually is. So yeah, I do think that these LB changes are good and bad at the same time. I think a lot of the versatility should stay, but then I think the third chain light needs to go away, and I think his hyper armor needs to be toned down just a bit. And then, other than that, I really don't have much else to say. Yes, the long arm during chain would be nice, but I don't think it's particularly necessary with the feintable shove. If they dropped feintable shove and gave you the option to long arm during chain, I think it would be absolute perfection, and I think you would probably take the spot as the most balanced character in the game. But that's all I have for LB, and I do hope all of you lovely, lovely gentlemen, beautiful one did enjoy it, and I'll see all of you wonderful, wonderful people next time. And join me on my Twitch, where you'll see all of this footage live.
The fact I do 6 or 5 damage to 16.
Oh, that's guaranteed. That is
Yeah.
guaranteed. That's hot.
Mm-hmm.